Welcome to the Southern Connection podcast. My name is Adam Luke.
I am Jeff Ortiz.
And we happen to be two male licensed marriage and family therapists that thought, you know what? There is not a channel out there talking about, relationships, male issues, all the good stuff. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring together a channel where we could work on connection, community, and your influence as a male in those relationships that are all around you. Sometimes we think that our sphere of influence is just like maybe our family. It's just going to be wife, kids, girlfriend, brother, sister, mother, whatever. Well, what we're actually going to be talking about how everything that you do, whether you're in sales, whether you're just playing with your kids, is interconnected by the relationships that we hold. So if you want to be a dynamic professional, we probably should work on who we are as a person. And that's what Southern Connection's all about. Now, for you guys out there who have been listening to us and paying attention, we appreciate it. And yes, we did take 4 weeks off. It was one of those things where life just kicks you and then all sorts of good things. And it's real easy to get out of the flow and the funk and the routine. And boom, all of a sudden, here we are. But we are back. We're back at the end of January. We ended in the end of December last time, so here we are. But what is today's topic going to be on it? So it was something that Jeff and I had sort of alluded to in previous podcasts, but today we're going to talk about the emotional male. Man, Jeff, when you hear that, the emotional male, what do you think about?
I'll tell you what I used to think. I used to think weakness, emotional male, feelings, emotions, actually feeling what is coming up inside of us. I grew up thinking that was a weakness, and I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with that. I'm not going to talk about that. What I've learned over time and going through my own process of healing is recognizing that emotional health, the emotional male, is very important and needed in our profession. It's needed in our family, in our home, modeling to our wives, modeling to our kids. So I know now it's different, but back when I was younger, I thought it was a sign of weakness, to be honest with you, Adam.
Absolutely. If you said the emotional male, I thought about the kid that was crying in dodgeball, or I was thinking about the dude that was like a total wuss after taking a zinger and tackling for football or something.
Yeah.
And so this idea of an emotional male definitely was not a part of me growing up. And I don't even think like you can just attribute it to like, oh, well, the male influences around you. Let's really look at it in the fact that society has actually not placed value on an emotionally confident male and in forever, right? And that's why we're going to have this discussion, because all of a sudden there needs to be a shift. It's been there. We've just not been willing to talk about it. And the fact that, you know what, sometimes the best answer is not to rub some dirt on it. It's not to walk it off. It's to talk about our fears. It's to be able to cry as a masculine person because sometimes life is just too tough. And we face absolute adversity at times. And the idea that you cannot, speak that out into truth and can't come and say, I'm feeling just exhausted and I feel overwhelmed and I don't know where to go. All that does is it builds males into being more isolating and to struggle with what I like to call silent depression. And we're kind of seeing that, especially in society. And I don't want to just say like, 2020 and be cliche. It's really over the last 10, 20 years that we've seen more of this silent depressive male where someone doesn't say anything till it's too late, till you find out that this person drank themselves to death or they took their own life. And the idea that someone has to sit there and struggle with the most challenging aspects of their life alone, I feel speaks to really how much growth is available for us in society. Because if we're saying that we value emotions, then we have to allow men into that space so that we can have this dialogue, so relationships can be enriched. And the thing that kicked off this whole desire for this podcast was having sat with men in therapy I'll watch them bawl and then have them apologize to me for crying.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me one day, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. Like, why are you apologizing? Oh, I shouldn't be like this. I should like just suck it up, whatever it might be. And sitting there and going like, well, no, if you can't cry in therapy in that space, where the hell can you cry?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. And that's I know that's why I got into the field, is to help people, to give them that space, but also to coach them and let them know that it's okay to do that, and modeling that. And I share some of my life story with clients, and that, you know, I share it on social media and that sort of thing. Like, putting myself out there, it frees me from those feelings, those hardships that can weigh me down, because now I'm just expressing what's going on inside. I'm letting it out. I'm controlling it. And to what you're talking about, like the internalization, right? And the imploding of yourself, because you're allowing those things to stay inside you, right? Those feelings, those emotions, that lack of connection. Or you can swing the whole other way, Adam, with the projection of, you know, the sadness and the hurt. And so then you start lashing out, and you're putting down family members, you're putting down community members, you're putting down, you know, everybody that you come in contact with. You're just that person that nobody wants to talk to. And so we see it externalized in the projection. And so it's really, you know, in therapy, we give people that opportunity. But what we want to do, you know, in coming here to you guys, is just plant some seeds in order for you to just kind of wrestle with. We know it's going to be a wrestle. It's going to be WWE to the max, and you're going to deny it. You're going to fight with it. You're like, I don't do that. I don't need to do that. But here's the thing, like, we know if you're watching this, you care. You care enough to watch. So there's got to be something inside you that says, you know what, I can bring more to the table in every aspect of my life. And maybe these guys they got something there. And so I just want you to take it and make it your own. We may present it in such a way that, you know, it's you know, you kind of understand it, but you make it your own. That's really what's going to stick anyway. So make it your own. Kind of fumble with this, wrestle with it, do what you need to do, but recognize that you're important, and we need you, and we need you to show up, and we need you to be who you were designed to be. You know, that man that your wife fell in love with, continue to be that guy. And, you know, the man that your kids look up to, even though you may not see that or believe that they look up to you, they do. Mm-hmm. Your kids look up to you. And, you know, it's just changing and shifting how you look at the world, and, you know, reframing it in a way that helps you see it differently.
Absolutely. Because what you're also talking about there a little bit is emotional intuition.
Yeah.
And so whenever I decide to deny myself an emotion, I'm in turn denying my emotional intuition. Yeah. And so, like, when I work with, I'll say fathers, the easiest group to go with it in my recollection of, like, fathers trying to understand the emotions of their children. The joke is that, you know, males are just emotionally stupid. I don't think that's the case. I think that it's, again, we've been sort of taught not to go with our intuition, because you'll get it. You know, this one instance that I had was a father that was saying, you know, he was worried about becoming his dad. It's what we all struggle with, whether, you know, it's our wives are worried about becoming their mothers. We're afraid of becoming our fathers in some ways. And not everyone's story has to be that way, but just hold with me for a second. And so what happened was, this father saw his little boy get hit with just beamed with a baseball, right? And he saw him get beamed with a baseball, and he saw that kid turn to him, tears in his eyes, like, and the father said, you know, I told him to walk it off, like, walk it off, don't rub it. And he goes, I watched as, like, my kid changed just a little bit in that moment. And it was like, wow, okay, well, you already have the awareness. So what do you think was happening in that moment? And he's like, I don't know. Normally I'm the one that's like, I'll suck it up and move on, but I felt really bad for my kid. Well, cool. Let's go into that. What were you feeling bad about? And he was like, well, I could see fear on his face. And so then here comes the cognitive interweave. I can only do it. Like, did you ever have that aspect in your life when you were a child? Did you ever have that experience? I was like, yeah. Okay, well, tell me what did you want when you were a kid like that? Like, I wanted to go over and like hug my dad and cry because I just got beamed by this damn ball. And I was like,
Right.
okay, and what happened to you? And he said, my father rebuffed me, shook me off, and told me to take my base. And it was like, And so the reason why I bring up this point is because, again, you may have spent most of your life suppressing the fact that you are actually emotionally intelligent and you actually do know how to respond. Because it would be okay if your kid comes running over screaming,
Yes.
doesn't want to take his base, doesn't want to play the game, it's a bad day, I got beamed with a ball. In the grand scheme of things of that child's life and development, it would be okay to say, all right, let's sit here, let's calm, let's have coping. Because come on, my favorite sign ever is that at T-ball they don't hand out collegial scholarships. Like,
Right.
it's the truth.
Nobody's winning a scholarship in T-ball. That's right.
You can give that kid a scholarship in shame and embarrassment for the rest of his life, though.
Yeah. That change that you talked about, like when your client told him to rub it and take your base, that change is going to take a lot to get back. And so what that kid was looking for was comfort, support, somebody to embrace their pain, right? That's what kids want of every parent, dad, mom, whoever. And so they look, you deny, and now they recognize, shoot, in that pain, I can't look to them. I'm supposed to just take my base. And like, to your credit, it's like in that moment, it's just a game that nobody's going to remember who won or lost. But in that moment, that kid's going to remember when dad embraced and hugged and nurtured when the child needed it. And it's taking those moments. And I, as a parent, have missed it. Trust me, I have missed it. And so I've told my son, take your base, you'll be all right. I've done it. And so it's really being aware that we can do it one way or the other. And it's totally up to you how you want to do it. But that intuition, that voice inside you that says it's okay to hug them and love them, do it. I think I'll speak for myself. I think at points in my life, I was afraid of what other people would think. Mm-hmm. I was afraid of how I would be viewed by nurturing and loving. Now I don't care. Like, I've been like this for quite some time, and that doesn't bother me. Like, because I want to lead by example. And so I don't mind, hugging my kids, my boys, 23 and 18. I'll hug them and love them and kiss them, and it doesn't matter to me. But I when I was at that place where I didn't know how to give myself permission to access that emotion, then I was worried about what everybody else thought of me. And so, I think one of the things we have to start doing is creating that awareness that it exists and give it permission to kind of come out.
Well, it goes back to that old adage of, misery loves company. So people can be out there and be miserable, and they're all okay as long as there's a large group of people who are hating life, right? Yeah. But as soon as someone starts living deliberately, someone starts building genuine connection, community relationships, and all of a sudden it's that person that's, batshit crazy. And
true.
Again, large scheme of things, when you have that kid gets beamed by a ball, and like you said, he's looking for nurture, he's looking for comfort, and he stares at the person whom he sees as the safest person in that moment, and that person goes no, he's going to stand back and go, all right, they're not safe either.
Yeah.
And again, as parents, not out there to just rub salt in the wound. We're all gonna
I've done it. Like hearing you say that makes me think to times when I did that to my boys. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm with you, the viewer. I'm like, dude, I've blown it. I've blown it. Trust me, I could say I've blown it. And it's like, dang, when we frame it that way, it's just different. And so but it's that fork in the road of recognizing it. The awareness helps kind of bring things up for us, and it gives us the awareness, gives us permission to either continue to do it this way or think far enough ahead to know, like, they just want to nurture and comfort, and we denied them. And then, man, what Adam said when you said we're not safe, oh my, it just blew my mind, because it's true.
Well, because
now
take that 5-year-old, now turn that 5-year-old into a 13-year-old, and then what do most of your parents come in and talk to you about when you're doing therapy? They don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Well, what did we teach them? What kind
Yeah.
of modeled to them not to talk to us?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not in to play the whole sexism game, but I'm just going to say that I will say I have observed as a therapist that some parents will make more emotional space for their daughters to be emotional or need comfort than they will their sons. And then they'll come in and they'll be like, well, why doesn't my son do that? Well, because when he has shown emotion or has cried, we picked on it. And
Yeah.
I can only go back to like my childhood. And I know my dad did everything he could, the best he could with what he had. But he grew up in a tough household too. And it was very much like work, provide. I mean, that's what I know. I have an amazing work ethic because I've watched my dad. And to this day, I still feel like I chase my dad in what he does because he works so hard. And so sometimes we can fall into that path that it doesn't matter about the moments in between as long as that, ends justify the means.
Yeah.
And so, that big paycheck's awesome. But on that other side, how about all those moments I gave up time that I didn't go spend with my wife, didn't go spend with friends, didn't influence that community that I had around me because I was chasing money. And it's all fine and dandy. It's great to look at the bank account. But you know what? When you don't have friends or family to spend it with, then all it is a boat anchor. Great. All this is what I have to show for my life. And that's why I had to start changing the way I was and actually paying attention to my emotions. That, you know what, the whole, grin and bear it idea doesn't work out in the end because you're always in the red. Sure, it might not be financially, but emotionally you will. And you can watch it yourself as you change. All of a sudden you can't handle just little emotional challenges that come up. Someone needs a little more hands-on in instruction or helping them grow in their professional capabilities. All of a sudden you're snapping at people. You have zero grace. You have zero empathy. Why? Because I'm running myself to the ragged edge. I have nothing else to give you. I am an empty pitcher. And so all you're going to get is my rage. And so I bring that word rage in because I feel like when we deny the emotional male, we then manifest our emotions as rage, as anger. So you didn't want this child or this adolescent, young adult, whatever, to show the vulnerable emotions. But then now we're all confused and perplexed why there's so much anger, there's violence, there's rage. Well, you reap what you sow. You completely deny this individual the emotions that allow us to process. Because when I sit down with my clients that are struggling with anger, I normally, and I could be wrong about this, but I'll validate them in the seeing red principle, which is once you're so overwhelmed, once you are in your rage, there's no stopping it once you're in rage. Like I can't give you a coping skill that's going to work when you're at 10 out of 10. Because at that point in time, just neurobiology, you're fight or flight, and right now you're in fight, and you're only going to get to that period of resolve when you have exhausted that fight side. And so
the prefrontal cortex is offline. They're nothing. You have no sense of awareness in the moment. No.
So trying to pull you out of it's going to be darn near impossible. It's not worth it. We got to catch you on the upswing. But this is what is the problem. I have turned off my ability to scale my emotions or even to identify them. And so why do you just go to rage? Well, because it's the only one I've ever been allowed, you know? And sometimes you can talk to some amazing families. I've talked to amazing families that, they're about following, being courteous, societal standards. But if their kid comes home and just beat the tar out of someone who said something mean about the family, about the kid, whatever. They're like, oh, well, at least he defended himself. So we'll go ahead and we'll show value on that side, on that physicality side, but we won't show any value or reward in saying, I feel overwhelmed, mom and dad, I don't know what to do. I'm crying. I cry on my way home. I cry in the truck. I do whatever, because I feel like I have to hold all this, you know. And guess what? The answer is not.
Yeah, and then we grow up and become men, and we're raising families.
How do we lead those families in emotionally? Because I love it when you get that. I break bro code when I'm a therapist, but I love it when I have that couple come in and I have that husband that's like, well, I'm supposed to be the leader of this family. And it's like, okay, cool. What do you lead them in? Crickets. Like what is it? It's not just, who controls the TV remote. It's not just who gets to buy the new truck. What are you leading them in? How have you led your kids emotionally lately? How have you led your wife? Let's talk about it. So you can throw cliches at me all you want, but at the same time, we got to talk about it. Because then, guess what? As a leader as well, we accept when we suck, when we failed.
Oh, responsibility.
Yeah. Oh, it's a real bitch.
But I think that's where we hold ourselves accountable to take responsibility when we do show up and we don't show up. And we don't have all the answers. We don't have to dictate and tell people how to do it. We don't have to parent and run our homes from a power differential because we're assuming the masculine role. Like, no, we come alongside. Like, that's how we influence, is by coming alongside and walking with and having empathy for and having compassion for. That's how we're going to lead. And that trust me when I say that is not a weak way of living. If your child who's a teenager is, defying you, well, hello, they're differentiating, they're becoming their own person. So it's like naturally they're going to, have their own way of thinking or own way of doing or their own desire of how they want to live. And that doesn't say anything about you other than that they're having a differing opinion. And so try to get a better understanding of them. But you can't do that if you don't know who you are and how you're showing up to these relationships. And, by tapping into your emotional intuition, your emotional intelligence, that is going to help bring out all the great qualities, all your strengths that maybe you've not tapped into in quite some time. And, maybe it's all the way back to that, 5-year-old self that playing ball and, getting dismissed. And then, the next year, the same thing. And it's just over and over again. And you're not allowed to feel, you're not allowed to talk about, you're not allowed to experience. And it's like, shoot, all these years of just bottling it up and then, projecting an outrage, it's important to recognize, okay, that one, that's a problem. And then two, okay, how do I unpack this? Like giving yourself permission to forgive, all those situations that got you to this point in your life, and figuring out, okay, like I don't have all the answers. Like when I heard, Adam say that, I made a mistake as a parent. Like, yeah, I made that mistake and it hit me. And I'm like, yeah, I can accept that responsibility. How do I move forward after that? Right? When I denied my son that love and that nurture, how do I repair that? How do I move forward after that? And, it's a process, but it's something that we have to recognize what we bring, because we cannot bridge that gap unless we know what we have to bring in the value of love, empathy, compassion, to be able to relate to them and engage them. Because that old term, hurt people is real. And so we just our dads did it, our mom did it, the generation after their dads did it, their moms did it. Like how do we break that generational cycle? Well, it starts with us and accepting responsibility for the things that we do or don't do, and be committed to the change process. That's so important. And like I said, we're not coming down on anybody. It's just at some point we got to take responsibility as a person, as a people, as a community, we got to take responsibility and stop projecting, well, I'm like this because of that. I do this because of that. Oh, okay, you can, but how relational is it?
Yeah.
It's getting back on track and trying to dive deeper, dig deeper, right, Adam, into who we are and how we show up and why we do the things we do.
Well, just because you were involuntarily handed a trauma does not give you permission to then traumatize other people. And so
Never.
That's why I always, when I'm working with clients, I talk about the courage it takes to come to this space, to recognize what was unfairly and unjustly placed on ourselves, and realizing that we're going to process it here because we don't wish this to continue to be passed down in our family tree. That's what therapy is. Therapy is us calling time and saying, nope, I'm making sure that this does not go to the next generation. And that's why it takes courage, because it's real easy. Just do nothing. Do nothing. It'll keep passing along, even if you don't mean it. I know some amazing individuals that I consider close and dear friends that, again, I know that they've hurt people, and we've talked about it, and it blows you away, because you're like, wow, you're my mentor, or you're the person I trusted the most during a period of my life, and yet we're still valuable. We're still
they're human beings.
We will pass
happens.
things that, like, oh man, where did that come out of? And so the other reason why I wanted us to have this conversation, Jeff, is the fact that there are men in different developmental stages in life right now that are having to wrestle with sitting around young males who are processing trials in their individual lives that might match up to the individual emotional wounds that we have. And so I know maybe some of you are like, that's some jargon. What do you mean, Adam? So this is the way I break it down. Is so maybe when you were 15, you lost your dad. Your dad passed away. And at that point in time, someone came up to you because they didn't know how to process emotion and trauma and said, well, now you're the man of the house. You got to suck it up and provide for your mom and for your sis, and you got to, put the whole weight of the family on you. You got to take care of it. Now here you are, maybe 45, 50 years old. Maybe a kid that's going through the same thing. Maybe it's a neighbor kid, maybe it's a kid at church, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, that child looks a lot like you at your time in life. And so the reason why I call this out is because just what we know psychodynamically, we will start interacting with that person like we're staring ourselves in the face. And I want that emotional male to be present to realize that you can give that person a different opportunity than was given to you. Instead of, the principle of you're going to throw the whole house on your back and you're going to carry it, you're the man of the house. How about just letting that kid be a kid? How about letting that kid have the space to talk about their frustrations, about the things they're not going to experience with their father or with their mother, or with whatever. I mean, it's just traumas in life. And so we have the ability to speak into our past somewhat through other individuals and be the person we did not have in our moment of strength. But if we don't ever pay attention to emotions, if we don't allow ourselves to scale what we're going through, then we're doomed to only sort of be tone deaf societally with the struggles that people are going through. And I know the reason why I used that frame is it's pretty close to my family's life in one way for a certain family member. And the joy that person ended up getting out of life of being able to speak into developing adolescents who went through that same struggle radically changed this individual in the last 15 years of their life. Why? Because they weren't stupid emotionally. They knew exactly what it felt like. They knew the pain of losing a parent. They knew the struggle of having to basically deny my childhood and become something I wasn't ever designed to be. And I can now see through his mentorship how he has enriched the lives of others. because he was that person he didn't have. And it's amazing because the more we have that awareness, you get the secondary gain of realizing that there's going to be just a little less hurt in this world.
Imagine the freedom in what he experienced in being able to identify with these young individuals, because he's creating empathy with them, and that weight, that hurt, that pain that once existed continues to lose its grip as he helps, as he puts himself out there, as he, leads in vulnerability and leads through engagement and giving them a space to process and feel and, experience everything that they're already experiencing, but putting words to it, putting a voice to it, giving it a narrative that will help them engage the world, at that time and even later in life. It's a powerful thing when we can connect with other people. And I think one of the things that, as men, like, not to disconnect from the world, not to isolate, and spend too much time drinking, too much time gambling, too much time on the porn sites, just to engage real people, hold yourself accountable to engage real people and have these talks. It is powerful. And it's important, and you need it, and you need it. I know you know what I mean. Yep. And it's just reaching out and being able to just say, okay, I'm going to put myself out there, just because it's going to free you from the guilt and the shame and the hurt and the pain that comes with it. We all experiencing something, and you don't have to be the hero to hold on to it so that everybody else is better. No, you're better when you let go of it, and we can see it, and we can recognize it, and we can share it together, right? And I'm not going to take it on, and nobody else is going to take it on, but it's just coming together and helping you and encouraging you and supporting you. You don't always have to be that pillar of strength and I got it together, I got this, I have that. We don't need that. No, we need you to be interactive. We need you to engage with everybody around you, and not that you're above everybody else, but that you're with everybody else, and you are doing so because you're emotionally in tune with what's going on and everything that you're experiencing. Give yourself that permission, that time, and that space.
And again, I think that we got to just throw a different perspective on it, that to be emotionally vulnerable in front of your family takes tremendous courage. I actually think a father, I don't think a father has any more power in any other situation than when he can cry in front of his kids and verbalize his emotions. Mm-hmm. Because I will tell you that how I learned how powerful tears were was when I realized when my father started crying, and that it sort of mile marked something important. Because I grew up in just a different situation where it was difficult to read emotions. And so when tears were, it was like, oh, that's important. That's something to pay attention to. That's something I use in therapy to this day. So I can thank my father for it, because when clients come in and they cry with me and they start dismissing it, I back them up. I say, no, tears are important. That means we hit something right there. And so your ability to cry in front of your children and then struggle and try to identify the emotions you're experiencing, what you're doing is you're inviting them into that space so that they're role modeling with you. There is not an intervention that powerful on the face of the planet that a therapist can prescribe to you, than you doing that with your kids. That's right. And it's okay, because it's okay to show them that sometimes we get overwhelmed. And again, with all the research we've done, people will always jump to like, yeah, but like, what if that stresses my kid out? Well, no. This is what we're going to look at. We're looking at the repair, and that's all kids care about is repair in relationships, right? So if you want to cry because of whatever is going on in life, what your kid's going to care about the most is the fact that you're still safe and secure. Because that's basic attachment. And if they can see, oh, wow, like dad's stressed because he lost his job. Dad, what are we going to do? Do what we always do. I'm gonna cry about it. We had dreams, aspirations, realities, and the expectations. We're gonna have to reconcile that. But you know what? I'm gonna start looking for another job, and we'll find a way forward. We'll find a way forward. And
Yeah.
what that tells your child is, boom, when we have to pivot in life, it doesn't mean it's over. It's not fatalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I can't go forward. I'm going to find a way forward,
Yeah.
and having that ability. That's why I don't think there's very many things that are at the top of my list of how important they have to be in society and how we need to see more of them. And the emotional male is one of them.
Yeah.
Because
very important.
Again, I think it takes tremendous courage. I think in some ways, not in some ways, in all the ways, it is more difficult to sit there and cry with your children than it is to simply just tell them, well, that's because I said so. And we're going this way. No, that shutdown's going to cost you. It saved you 15 minutes now, but it's going to cost you years on the back.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's
very well said. I'm guilty of doing that too, and so, now I don't do that, and but it's something that my boys had to learn over time that they can trust. Like, okay, he's authentic in this, where at first I'm sure they were confused. And then when, as I'm going through the change and healing process and they see the back and forth fight, right? It's a process. So it's like, it's not something I can change immediately, but when I did go back to them, I said, hey, I'm still working through this and I own my part. I'm sorry. I apologize. And for a teenage boy to hear that from their dad, that's important, right? Because I'm owning my part. I'm owning my part. If I lost my cool and I yelled and I rose my voice and put them down, I'm owning my part, right? I did it, at least I own my part. Like, there's a lot of times where parents don't, and I've done that too. And so once I decided, hey, I want to be able to access my emotional chest. Like, I know I have something inside. I know I got something inside me. And once I started accessing it, being able to pull it out and utilize it and really being okay with it, not worrying about it. Mine was the big thing was like, what are other people going to think of me? Once I overcome that, and being concerned with that, it was one of those things where I recognized, what, this is actually a strength. This is a strength that I have, that I can utilize this. And it's not anything different than what anybody else can do. It's just really trying to recognize when we are following that narrative of like, what are other people going to think of me? Are they going to think less of me? Are they going to think of me as weak? At that point, I didn't care. I just wanted to be relational. I wanted people to know that I loved them, because inside of me, the love was growing. So I'm like, well, really underneath when I got angry was I was scared for my kids, or scared for a situation. I was hurt. I was disappointed, maybe I was upset, but they're confused. There's all kinds of things going in there. But if I don't express that, it's going to come out in anger. But really, if I give myself time, instead of exploding, if I can give myself time and catch my body saying, something's not right here, you're about to explode, you're going to get upset, and then just back away, go for a walk, don't say anything that I'm going to have to apologize for. Right. And then, give myself that space and really recognize, oh, I'm scared. Like, I'm scared that if they X, Y, and Z, or, I'm concerned because of this, or, I may not even have the answer. I may not have an answer for what I'm seeing. And I'm just like overwhelmed, and just sitting with it, and then just sharing that. Sitting down with your son or daughter and share that. Sitting down with your wife and sharing that. I'm scared. We got all these bills, and I don't know how we're going to do it, because I got cut short at work because of this and that. And hey, we don't know. And that's why it's important to take the day to day, take one day as it comes, and live in that day, and then, worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes.
Yep.
Right. And so it's how to be present, being present in everything we do.
Absolutely. Well, so for everyone that tuned in with us and sat with us, I know we're about 40 minutes in, and so we're gonna cut off because we want this to be bite-sized, right?
Yeah.
Don't want to blow you away with a little too much, but this is setting the stage, because next week, we're going to sit down. We're going to do an even harder one. It's going to be the case for masculinity. And I can already hear some of you firing up, and I'm looking forward to, if you want to drop us a comment, you want to send us an email, please do it. We would love to have your input help shape the discussion. But of these next 2 podcasts, it's really bringing out the reason why we need to have this light shown on here is because as a therapist, I can just speak with myself. I'm tired of blind spots. We have massive blind spots in our society. And it's time for us to call each other on the carpet. And so you may wrestle with our definitions of masculinity next week. You may have wrestled with something that we talked about this week. And it's always a challenge in a podcast because we can't speak out to those narratives that are spinning off in your head, the voices that are talking about your own personal experience and how maybe you did have a masculine role model in your life that really treated you poorly. And I'm sorry for that. But we still have the ability to shape what masculinity looks like going forward. And that experience that you had can definitely help with how you interact with that next generation that's up and coming. We can influence it in a positive way so that experience you had does not continue to be perpetuated down the line. And so this is where you're no longer allowed to just sit out on the sidelines, because your experience has to be grounded in making sure that there's an awareness around us. And when we don't speak out to it, all we allow is for ambiguity to exist, for this blind spot to take a hold. And then guess what? We're not seeing change. And so that's why we're talking about this. So again, if you tuned in on your drive in, or you just caught us on the YouTube or whatever it might be, we are so grateful to have you guys. Again, I've been watching as it's been clicking up. More of you are listening. And so we're looking forward to being able to bring this to you more consistently. We also got some new hardware coming in, so it's going to be easier. So, as you invest in us, we invest in ourselves and in this podcast. So thank you guys and gals for what you do. And as always, please reach out if you have a topic you'd love us to cover.
Definitely. We love you guys. We're here for you. We're rooting for you just as much as we're rooting for ourselves. We're all in it together. That's the big thing. Like we are not trying to come down on anybody. We're not trying to speak to anybody in particular. It's just like we're sharing our lives. We're sharing our experiences. We're sharing our work with you to help you to maybe click on something that will get you to be that person you were designed to be. That's all we're doing. And because we care, we're investing in you by putting this podcast out there. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for allowing us to grow as you grow. That's the best way I can frame.
Right. Amen.
I like that. Out for this week. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. See you guys.
See ya.